You are listening to the Weekly Wager, the NFL edition, with the Doctor and Uncle B. How you doing, Doctor? We already had some of those Thursday games, so we got a short week this week. We had some interesting action. We had the Bears and the Lions, and the way I saw it, the Lions ended up push. That was a push for me. The Bears prevailing 16-14. We had an interesting Dallas Raiders game where it ended up being a high-scoring game. And then we had the Buffalo-New Orleans game where Buffalo walked away pretty easy, covered by 18. And we were 2-0 in our picks. I think a pretty good showing for the Weekly Wager in the NFL on Thursday, the Thanksgiving Day special. And we have some interesting games. What'd you think of the Thursday games, Uncle B?
Well, you know what? I hope Sunday plays out the same way. I think it worked out exactly how we would have liked. Hey, so the game in the morning that we talked about watching, how interesting, how good are they? Were at the point I had heard somebody else had got two and got a push. Is that what happened? You got two on it and got a push?
I got a push. Detroit came out. They started off really well, and I was looking. I bet that. I'm not interested in two teams that are kind of going in the direction they're going, but I thought for sure maybe with the short week, and Detroit did come out and play well. They were competitive. Chicago, we're still waiting for that announcement to see if Nagy gets canned. But, Detroit fought pretty well. Again, they have been close in all their losses this year, and it was another close loss for them. So ended up pushing there, but definitely hit on the Raiders and the Bills. So pretty good overall day for the Weekly Wager on Thursday, and some nice turkey. I hope you had some turkey yourself. Let's talk about the games we're going to cover this weekend. A shorter schedule. Did we get any, and we're going to talk about, did we learn anything on the mirror game? And I'm going to bring that up. We could bring it up later when we get to it, but we're going to talk about Tennessee, New England. We're going to talk about Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Tampa Bay, Indy, Minnesota, San Francisco, LA Rams, and Green Bay. Very interesting to myself. A lot of injury things we can talk about in that game. Cleveland at Baltimore, and that's the last one we're going to cover. But what are you thinking? What do you think in this first game, this New England team, which is now being called the best team in the AFC right now, this New England team, they're favored by 7 against Tennessee at home.
Yeah, that's a great matchup, obviously. That's kind of how I've gone about handicapping this week. It was a little bit on how I looked at the Raider-Dallas game. It's interesting when we start listening to the stories that we discussed. The story seemed to be, and I heard it even again Thursday, is that the Raiders had quit. And I just found it hard to believe that a 5-5 team in the NFL, as we were watching the Detroit game, I said to myself, this is why I put a money line bet in on the Raiders. As I was watching two teams in the morning play, combined do not have 5 wins in the NFL.
Right. Yeah, right. Not great.
And hearing a story that says that the Raiders have quit, and I said, there's just no way that a 5-5 team in the NFL has quit, right? So we go opposite of that, and we do pretty good. Now, obviously, the story is that New England's playing well, and then Tennessee is missing some pieces, so we got to keep the network story in mind. But what I'm looking at is the spread.
Well, I think let's talk about a couple of these injury things, because the injuries are playing a big factor in the NFL. On offense, Tennessee is looking at, obviously they don't have Derrick Henry, who's on IR, but their backup, Donata Freeman, looks like he's questionable. A.J. Brown is questionable. They already have Julio Jones, who really has done nothing this year. He's on IR already. And then they're in defense. They have 5-6 guys who are in their starting base 3-4 defense that are questionable going into the game. Where you have New England. New England has some minor injuries. They have some injuries at running back. Hunter Henry, tight end problems with Geno Smith, and then a couple injuries on defense. But New England going into this much healthier. So what do you think in spread-wise in this one?
I'm a firm believer that they're aware of all that information when they send this line out and start taking money on the game. And we see a game that opened at 2.5 that is now all the way up to 7 with balanced money. And I think that people are starting to adjust a little bit on the strength line of New England. This is a tough game, because if we had opportunity of betting this game, it was at 3. We missed the 3. We missed the 4. We missed the 6. Now we're playing at 7. I really like New England, Jeffrey, but if we show any type of discipline whatsoever, now that we're at 7 in this game, it's got to be a no play for me.
Well, you talked about it, and you talked about it yesterday on the show we did on Wednesday. You talked about the Raiders, where the Raiders became much more of a value play at 7.5. which is where I got him when I made my wager on that game. And so that was the deciding factor in you doing that. So, and I think, again, this goes into what we've talked about before, where there's a discipline to this, right?
Right. So, I would say a strong play that I would believe wholeheartedly in is that Bill Belichick does not lose this game at home. Okay? Which means we have to do one of two things. Either we have to get involved in a teaser or some sort of parlay on the money line, or we have to lay a tremendous amount of wood to get $100 return. And I'm not in the mood to do either one of those because I don't want to play around with a teaser this week. So I just kind of lay it out that way so that folks, it doesn't deter somebody from playing a strong team in New England at home, where I think, they got offense, defense, they can run the ball, they're well coached, they're at home, and it's a touchdown or less. Potentially you can get 6.5. The play there's New England.
Yeah, they've been rolling. They've been hot. Let's go over. So that's a tough game, is what you're saying. Basically, that's not going to be in your A, B, or C for this week, is what you're saying. So let's go to Uncle B. Let's look at. Might as well talk about. We talked about Belichick. Let's talk about his old quarterback, where we have Tampa Bay at Indianapolis. Indianapolis 6-5. Tampa Bay 7-3. Looked a little bit better, but it was the Giants last week. Not really sure they're home dogs here with Indy plus the 3 against Tampa Bay. What are you seeing here?
Well, Indianapolis is obviously a decent football team. They're playing well. They're balanced. Same thing that in these teams that we're looking at that are successful, they can stop the run, but they can also run the ball, and they're balanced. And so now we got two teams matching up against each other. I feel as if Indianapolis is a good play, but they're coming off of such a high-scoring game at Buffalo, and they're playing against Tom Brady, who I don't like to go against. So it is a difficult game here. You're getting 3 at home.
I'm looking at Tampa Bay's injury-wise. Tampa Bay has some injuries to some of these key players. I mean, they're Mike Evans questionable. Antonio Brown's out for this one. You have a couple starters on defense who are questionable. Pierre-Paul, Devin White, and Vita Vea. And so you do have some questions on health for them. Indianapolis looks like a much healthier team now, getting back T.Y. Hilton into the fold. Much healthier going into this game. So is this one an avoid too, Uncle B, or what are you thinking here?
I get tentative playing against somebody like Tom Brady.
Right, because he's one of those guys like the Weasel, if you will. Aaron Rodgers, who, if he gets the ball at the end of the game, he's going to have a chance. And in a close spread like that, hard to bet against him. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. And I also I like what Indianapolis has done, but I'm leery of teams that blow out against the spread the following week. But I will take Indianapolis plus the 3 points at home. I think they're a good enough team to win outright, and I'm getting 3 points at home. So that'll be one of the plays, Indy plus 3.
So what do you think about the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati Bengals matchup? Very good divisional kind of game here. We have the 5-4 Steelers against the 6-4 Bengals. Cincinnati 3.5-point home favorites. Neither of these teams are really dominant against the spread. You have Cincinnati 5-5 against the spread with the Steelers 4-6. In terms of injuries, Pittsburgh looks relatively healthy. The Bengals here relatively healthy as well, so not as much of a factor there. This is just one of those games that usually plays out pretty close, regardless of how good either team is on any given Sunday.
Yeah, I like this game. I like divisional matchups, and we're still getting more than a field goal with Pittsburgh. I think public perception is more that Cincinnati is better than Pittsburgh. I think folks are not that high on Pittsburgh, but I see well-coached teams as we get down into November, December. This starts to fit into the mode of Pittsburgh. And I think you'll also notice as we dive into the numbers, we have some interesting statistics on Roethlisberger. He's from Ohio. And if you look at how he's done when he plays in the state of Ohio, he has a tremendous record winning straight up, and he also has a tremendous record against the spread. I think he hasn't covered against the spread maybe once or twice out of 9 or 10 games in that.
So he likes heading back for some home cooking is what you're telling me.
He likes it, and he's going to get more than 3 points here. We've got a defense. We've got a good head coach. We got a veteran quarterback in a divisional game, and we're getting more than a field goal. I like Pittsburgh.
All right, well, we'll see in a little bit if that's one of the Uncle B's A, B's, or C's, but we'll figure that out a little bit later in the show. What are you thinking about the Minnesota and San Francisco game? So Minnesota actually now, pretty interesting, came through strong against Green Bay. Offense looked excellent. Both of these teams relatively healthy. Will have pretty much a full core, a little bit dinged up 49ers at the running back position, but most of their guys are healthy on both sides of the ball here in this game. What are you seeing here?
Well, Minnesota's got a brutal schedule, and they have done a good job of competing, but they've had two pretty much must-win situations if you look at their recent schedule. And then I also see a team in San Francisco that needed to get healthy. They were missing a couple of things. They're well coached, and so if we take a short frame here, I think we're catching San Francisco on the upswing, something similar to what we've seen with New England, but New England's a couple of games more down the road on that. And then I really avoid teams that are coming out of a divisional matchup where they won as an underdog at home. So that was a big-time win for Minnesota. It's important division. They've won two big games. They go back out on the road to the West Coast, and they're playing a San Fran team that seems to be putting things together, and they will run it. They showed us that against the Rams. They will run it right down your throat and play physical. The money seems to be on Minnesota. So I like San Fran at home here to cover that number.
You know, now that Jimmy G is healthy, they've had some weeks under there. That team looks pretty good. They have a lot of playmakers again. These guys are looking, last few games, looking like a very good team. They've had some near misses where their record could be a little bit better. Let's head next to another divisional game, which is kind of interesting here. Another kind of tough-fought game, Cleveland at Baltimore. Last week, we had the late news on Lamar Jackson coming out of that game, and that definitely could cause a line to move pretty quickly. But we have Cleveland, who has often injured right now, is Mayfield. Mayfield's not very healthy at all, but seems to be playing through it.
This is kind of similar comment that we made about the Raiders, right? It looked as if maybe the Raiders just needed to play an away game and get out of Vegas. A little breath of fresh air, right? I love angles on divisional matchups. You notice I brought one up there with Roethlisberger in Ohio. Okay, here's another one where we have a divisional team that's been getting beat by their big brother here, right? So Cleveland is in a revenge spot. They're on the road. They've been getting beat up by the public. And if I was hopeful, I actually want to see Case Keenum. I don't want to see Baker Mayfield. I know that might upset some folks, but it'll be deemed as a downgrade, so I may get a point in my favor. And at the end of the day, Baltimore comes down to their quarterback. So you'll notice as we look at Baltimore's scores and we look back on their games, how many games has Lamar won for them? And how close are those games? Look, I can go through them right now, quick.
They're super competitive and super close, most of their games.
Yes, they are, and they need him to do it every time, right?
Absolutely. He's like Superman for that team.
And it's darn near every other game. You see 17-19, then the next week 23-7. Then you see a 25-31, then 34-6. Then you see a 34-31, then 10-22, then a 16-13.
Oh, no, they played a lot of close games for sure.
And then, Cleveland can run the football, and they like to play a physical game. So if we also look at the angle, I just don't feel as if Cleveland's being painted very pretty in the network news right now. And similar to the Raiders in that spot, right? They weren't painted real pretty in Thursday's pre-games and when they're talking about them being done. I think we're going to get the same story on Chicago. So you look for a group of men to show up, getting some points in a divisional game where they know someone well, and get ready for a fist fight.
Interesting. Hey, most of the money on this game right now is trending towards Baltimore, by the way. It's 61% to 39% on Cleveland. That probably makes it even more interesting for you, Uncle B.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we want.
Hey, last one we're going to cover, and it's my team with the Weasel. LA Rams at Green Bay, and I haven't seen this in a long time. Green Bay getting 1 point at home, and they are against the spread. They're 4-0 at home. They're 4-0 at home in general. And I'm telling, they're 9-2 against the spread this year. This has been a team that's been covering, where you have a Rams team that's 4-6 against the spread, 7-3 last 10, 7-3 against the spread. So, or 4-6 against the spread the last 3. But Green Bay getting a point at home, probably because of the Rodgers, which is not a COVID toe. He's not even listed as a designation on the injury report, though we know he's got a toe thing. We also have Aaron Jones potentially coming back. And you see that Dillon may be great, but I think the strength of that running game is when they have the versatility of both backs. The speed of Aaron Jones, the power of Dillon. That's a pretty damn good backfield, probably one of the best in NFL. And then you have the Rams, fairly healthy, but offensively, where are they going? This team has not looked great in recent weeks. They're up, they're down. And I think that at the beginning of the season, if you took the first 4 or 5 weeks, you had the Rams as one of the Super Bowl favorites, and now in the last 5-6 weeks, I don't think that's the same picture. So what are you seeing in this game, Uncle B? Because I have my own ideas, but LA Rams at Green Bay, certainly going to be a great game. 1:25 start in the afternoon for the Pacific Coasters here. But a great game. This is a big game for Green Bay because 8-4 changes a lot of things around. They're only a half a game behind Arizona with their head-to-head win. So what do you see here, Uncle B?
Yeah, I get the same feeling on this game as I did Harbaugh. It kind of draws me into one direction, and I never liked that, right? So if you look at this spread, ultimately what you're telling me when they drop this number is that there's a 50% chance that Aaron Rodgers can lose this game at home. And I find that really hard to believe. Now is where we come into a dilemma. Anytime I find myself in a situation where I don't want to believe a number, that's when we need to pause, take a step back, and say, okay, what's going on here, right? Because of everything that you just said, dead on. I cannot disagree whatsoever, right? So why in the world is someone telling me that Rodgers has a 50% shot of losing this game? And on top of that, from the opening line, they've moved the Rams to the favorite.
Yeah, and let's remember, this is in LA. So here, just let me set up some things, because you have to start talking about it now, because we're into almost December. So you got to talk about weather. This is an LA team, and we talked about that the last couple of weeks in the college games. Pros are a little different. The kids are, it's different, but it's the same thing. You have an LA team that's used to practicing outside, 75, 80-degree weather. They're going to go to Green Bay, where now we're sub-freezing. Going to be 34 at game time, but you know how things can change. Any place in the Midwest, I lived in the Midwest for years, the weather changes on a dime, and we might get some snow on Saturday, the day before the game. And all I can tell you is when opposing teams go in there, the Packers have a knack for knowing how the field's going to play, and the opposing teams can sometimes be stifled. I remember a game, I want to go back like 30 years ago, when Barry Sanders played the Green Bay Packers in a playoff game, and Sanders rushed for like -6 rushing yards, because I don't know if they iced the field, but it sure seemed like it. So I think there's some advantages here that underlie the actual players on the field. Definitely the home field advantage. Green Bay covering regularly at home, one of the best home field advantages in pro football. Uncle B, what are you thinking? Do you think the pick is in on the Packers here?
I can't get past the spread. I can't disagree with everything that you said. And based on the story the picture that we just painted, Green Bay should be favored by at least a field goal or more, and they're not. I would think if there was no word of
the Rodgers injury, again, Rodgers poking fun in the media. They said something about having a COVID toe, which is something to do with lesions or something that some people get during COVID. He really just had a sprained foot, I guess. I have a sprain, and I want to tell you this from personal experience. I have a sprained toe from playing tennis. I have not fixed it. I think he can play with it. They can do a lot of different things with shoes. I don't think this line's right. I think we'll see on Sunday. But the pick in for me, I'm certainly on the Packers on this one, and probably heavy. So,
all right, I'm going to trust you because you're a Packers fan and you know them. I can't budge. I'm going to tail you on this.
So hey, let's break this down. Let's focus on the weekly wager, where we kind of set these up in order of the plays, the ABC. Uncle B, you ready?
Weekly wager.
What are you thinking here?
All right, so let's go. I'm gonna shift gears. I'll go the other way. So I just have to trust Bill Belichick at home in this game. This line's telling me that sharp money. This isn't public money that's moved this thing this much. So I'm gonna go with the smart money that's moved this thing. I would try and search for 6.5 or 6, get this thing below 7. But C play, because of the spread movement, is New England Patriots.
New England Patriots, and try to hunt down that spread. If you're in one of those states with the online legalized gambling where you can go DraftKings or one of the other services, you definitely can find that available potentially. And you'll see, if you look at lines nowadays, you'll see several different lines from different services on some of the lines makers. So you have the ability. In the old days, you would just have your one guy you go to, not many options. So just keep that in mind. So New England's the first pick, a C game for Uncle B. What are you thinking?
And why don't we do this? Why don't we put New England with Indianapolis and flip a coin? You could take either one of those two teams at home.
Would you put equal units on those two games?
Yeah, they're both two good teams. They're at home. One of them we're getting a field goal, and the other one we're expecting to win. So, if you want to be safe, those are two good home teams, well coached, balanced, and you're not getting crazy. Those are good wagers, so to speak. Now, if we want to get, we're going to move up the scale here. Our B game, let's take as our B game, let's take the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns plus the points.
Cleveland Browns plus 3.5. And what you see is a close game here. And I'll tell you, you're right. Jackson has to be Superman for that team, and they win a lot of close battles coming down to field goals. So the B game is the Cleveland game. Do you have any other B games, or we're going to go right to the A plays?
No, I would line up the same thing as we did before with Pittsburgh. Same division, same type of idea of what we're playing here. We're playing situational system type plays. So those are two good Bs for you. You got Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
Cleveland and Pittsburgh in the B spot. And then what do you have for your A games for this week? By the process of elimination.
Why don't we do this? I'll take my San Fran, and in the same breath, we're gonna take the Weasel and hope he doesn't let us down. I'm tailing you, so we got two A's as well. Let's take San Fran and Green Bay.
I like it. You heard it. Uncle B's picks are in, and I'll tell you, I like that pick. That's a conviction pick for me. Is the Green Bay one. I also like the San Francisco pick. I think it's a very interesting, especially taking into account what we said about Minnesota having a very tough divisional win, maybe ready for a little bit of a letdown. San Francisco playing well, on a Thanksgiving week, focus still on a real nice uptrend. And I think that's a good pick with San Francisco. You heard it. Those are the picks for the week in the NFL with the doctor and Uncle B, the weekly wager. Hey, if you're listening or watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. We'll see you again next time.